Picture this. A sound signal, maybe music, poetry, a voice, leaves a transmitter somewhere in Italy.
Huh?
It doesn't take the internet superhighway. Instead, it climbs into the ionosphere, bounces back down, traveling thousands of miles.
Right, across borders, oceans.
Exactly, past digital firewalls. And it lands in places you might assume are completely off the airwaves or, only connected online.
It sounds almost like something out of, history book, doesn't it? Like a relic from the golden age of shortwave listening.
It really does.
But you're right, this isn't just nostalgia. It's a deliberate, active thing happening right now, reaching listeners in some really unexpected parts of the world.
Precisely. And we're here today to unpack a stack of sources you've shared that really shine a light on this fascinating corner of the media world.
Yeah, we've got material explaining the platform that makes it possible, something called International Public Access Radio, IPAR.
And also a really personal account, which I found fascinating, from someone who actually creates programs specifically for this platform.
So our mission today is to use these sources to understand that platform, IPAR, and also the Italian radio relay service at IRRS.
Okay.
And then meet the creator of this program, 16 Gwendoline Street. Trace its journey, from its very earliest, almost accidental beginnings to what it broadcasts today. And really just appreciate the unique role this kind of broadcasting still plays.
Let's start with that foundation then, the platform itself. What exactly is International Public Access Radio, IPAR, according to sources?
Okay, so the sources tell us IPR is basically a service run by the NEXUS-International Broadcasting Association.
Right, NEXUS-IBA.
Yeah. And its main job, its core function, is to offer a public access broadcasting platform. Think of it like airtime available to pretty much anyone who wants to get a message out.
And this specific program we're focusing on, 16 Gwendoline Street, it uses this, right, which is also known as the Italian Radio Relay Service, IRRS.
That's the one. And the sources mentioned Ron and Alfredo work there at IPR in Milan, Italy. They seem to be the key contact. Okay, got it. And the really crucial thing about this platform, as the sources keep emphasizing, is the technology it uses. We're talking mainstream world radio, which, most of us call shortwave, alongside AM or medium wave, and yes, also internet streaming. But the key is they offer airtime using these, let's say, legacy technologies at special low rates.
Low rates, specifically for public access. Why is that so important? What's the sort of driving principle behind offering this?
The why seems really clear in the source. It's fundamentally about promoting free speech, providing a platform for diverse viewpoints.
Okay.
They even reference big principles, like those in the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, Article 11 of the U.S. First Amendment. Basically, the idea that people have a right to communicate, as long as the content is, legal.
So it's designed to be a genuinely open platform, then?
Absolutely. The sources are really specific here.
Right.
IPR is open to, individual program producers, legitimate organizations, NGOs, community radio stations, political groups, non-religious organizations, you name it.
Wow, quite a range.
Yeah, from anywhere in the world. And you can use it to relay an existing podcast or program you already have, or they can even help you create something new from scratch.
And this openness, combined with the specific technologies, that gives it a capability that maybe newer platforms don't have.
This is where it gets particularly interesting today, I think. The sources highlight that IPR's broadcast method, especially shortwave, let it reach regions across the digital divide.
Places without good internet.
Exactly. Or maybe no internet at all. But maybe even more significantly, they explicitly state it can bypass internet firewalls and censorship, in countries where freedom of speech is restricted.
So wait, that old shortwave radio receiver, the kind you might see gathering dust in an attic somewhere, that's actually a tool for getting around modern digital censorship. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the sources are quite clear on this. They describe shortwave as inexpensive, portable, dependable, and capable of reaching millions across borders and firewalls. They list places like parts of Africa and Asia, and specific countries too: Ethiopia, Somalia, Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, China. Lots of places where listeners can tune in, potentially free from government control. The receivers themselves are small, hard to detect.
That really underlines the sort of strategic importance of these older technologies then.
Yeah.
Okay, so with such a wide open platform designed to bypass restrictions, what about content? How do they handle what actually gets broadcast?
Well, the sources say they actively welcome programs from different perspectives, conservative, liberal, democratic, whatever. The goal is fostering open dialogue.
Okay.
But, and this is important, they maintain a strict, long-standing policy against fake news or misinformation.
Really? How long-standing?
They say this policy has been in place since 1979, and they strengthened it again in 1988, so it's not a new reaction to current events.
Right.
They also point to a history of carrying firsthand news from credible organizations like UN Radio and UNESCO Radio.
That commitment to fighting misinformation, especially on a platform reaching potentially censored areas, that feels incredibly relevant.
Okay, so that's the infrastructure, the how this stuff gets out there. But who is this program creator, Stephen John Jones? Where did his radio story start?
Okay, so Stephen John Jones, according to the sources, the producer of 16 Gwendoline Street. His journey into all this started after he moved to the Isle of Wight way back in 1998.
The Isle of Wight, okay.
Yeah, he'd spent about 10 years before that curating art exhibitions and publishing, quite intense work apparently, and decided he needed back.
Makes sense, taking a break after a busy career. But radio, how did that specifically come about?
Well, the sources say that after about 6 years on the Isle of Wight, boredom started to creep in. He needed a new creative outlet, a challenge.
Ah, the classic retirement itch.
Something like that. So he approached Ron and Alfredo at IPR in Milan. Remember them?
Yep, from IPR. He pitched them an idea for an arts program. And actually, he was initially promised free studio time locally on the Isle of Wight itself.
Which, if I'm reading this right, didn't quite.
Didn't materialize for whatever reason.
Well.
But importantly, he didn't let that stop him. He just decided to press ahead with whatever he had available at home.
Okay, resourcefulness. But what did he have? How basic are we talking?
He describes using an old tape recorder with the built-in microphone. Wow. Okay. His own words in the source are, it was hard work and scrappy.
Hard work and scrappy with an old tape recorder. That's quite a leap from the global reach via shortwave we were just discussing. What did he even call the program back then?
Well, keeping it personal, he decided to name the program after his home at the time. It was a converted Victorian villa at 39 Dover Street.
Ah, so the program was initially called 39 Dover Street.
Exactly. A very personal touch right from the start.
So from those very, very basic, scrappy beginnings, how did the sound quality and maybe the content too evolve over time?
Well, he started gradually improving his kit, sourcing things as he went along.
Yeah.
He found this software program called Audio Record Wizard, the 2006 version, apparently.
Okay.
He found it easy to learn, and kind of amazingly, the source says he still uses it today.
Still uses the 2006 version. Wow.
Yeah. And then later, he significantly boosted the audio quality with a high-end Shure microphone and a proper dual cassette recorder editor, a Teak W865R, the source notes.
Cassettes again. It's funny how often older tech keep popping up as being really cool here.
It really is. He even mentions in the source, kind of musing, about potentially returning to analog, like cassettes, because of the clear sound they offer. He notes that, like vinyl, they're making a bit of a comeback.
Interesting.
But he did eventually make the jump to digital recording in September 2009. He started using a Zoom recorder then, which, again, he says he still uses today, even though it's showing its age.
So this whole setup sounds like it's really built on perseverance, finding reliable tools old or new and making do. What about actually getting the program onto the airwave back then?
Initially, he had a 1-hour slot on shortwave. The frequency was 5,775 kilohertz.
Okay.
There was apparently a period where a transmitter problem forced him onto internet-only broadcasts for a while.
Ah, a setback.
Yeah, but he eventually returned to shortwave, mainly using 9510 and 7290 kilohertz, according to the source, and also broadcasting on some local Italian medium wave frequency.
And the focus of the program, has that stayed the same since those early 39 Dover Street days?
The contents remain broadly art-based, but the specific focus has shifted a bit, especially, it seems, since the pandemic.
How so?
Well, the sources say that with fewer live events to cover, the program became more of a worldwide exploration of music. He still features artists when he can, and includes poetry readings too. At the time the source was written, he mentioned the program had just featured something from Ecuador.
That makes perfect sense. Adapting the artistic focus fit the global situation. Does the source mention any specific highlight in the really early days stood out for him?
Yes, he mentions a couple of specific moments that were clearly significant. He recalls interviewing the acclaimed Scottish poet Norman Mackay.
Oh, wow. That's a big name.
Yeah, and he also featured readings from quite a list of poets. The source provides people like Penelope Shuttle, Pauline Stainer, Peter Dale, Karen Schenfeld, Anita Andreas, Brian Hint, and also music and poetry from Joy Harjo and Linquazy John.
Those are definitely notable names in the arts and world. So, okay, he's creating this program, building his setup piece by piece, broadcasting it out on these various frequencies. What happens when the signal actually reaches? What does he hear back from?
Ah, this is where that global connection we talked about really comes alive in the source. He talks about the moment he received his very first reception report and something called a QSL request.
A QSL request? What's that?
Ah, right. For radio hobbyists, a QSL card is basically like a postcard. A listener sends it to the station, or the program producer in this case, to confirm they successfully heard the broadcast. It's like their way of saying, hey, I heard you, here's proof.
Got it. Like a confirmation receipt for radio.
Exactly. And he describes receiving that very first one as a pleasant surprise. It came all the way from Paris.
From Paris? Just from his home setup on the Isle of Wight? That must have been quite a feeling, knowing this signal made it that far.
Oh, absolutely. You can imagine. And Paris was just the beginning, apparently. The source details how subsequent reports and QSLs started coming in from all over Europe on shortwave.
Right.
And closer to the transmitter on medium wave from places like Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Latvia, the Netherlands.
Okay, so that's a solid European footprint building up. But you mentioned global reach earlier. Just how far has Gwendoline Street truly traveled, according to listener reports?
The furthest reports mentioned in the source are really quite astonishing. They've come from New Zealand.
New Zealand, wow.
Japan, the eastern USA, Asiatic Russia, specifically noting reports from listeners along the path of the old Silk Road.
Incredible.
Mongolia, Siberia, and Israel.
New Zealand to Siberia, a deeply personal program about art and music, broadcast using what many people probably consider outdated tech, connecting with listeners literally across half the globe. That's genuinely remarkable.
And the source adds another, perhaps poignant layer to that, mentioning recent reports coming from places like eastern Ukraine and European Russia, including Moscow.
Reports from active conflict zones. How does receiving those reports reports affect him, according to source?
He says it provides a significant lift to the, quote, feel-good factor. For him, these reports are proof, a sense that people are still thinking internationally, that they're still tuning in and valuing shortwave, even in, these are his words, in the bleakest of time. It brings this real sense of shared experience, of connection, despite everything.
That connection through radio, carrying arts and culture into really difficult places, it speaks volumes about the power of this platform, IPAR, and this very specific program. Now, you mentioned earlier the program changed name from 39 Dover Street. When did that happen, and where did 16 Gwendoline Street come from?
Right, the name change happened in 2011. This is when Stephen John Jones moved back to Wales. Apparently, he'd lived there until he was about 3 years old.
Ah, return home, in a way.
Yeah, and he moved there to begin what he calls his retirement project. The new name, 16 Gwendoline Street, is also based on the idea of his former home, that converted Victorian villa at 39 Dover Street.
Okay.
But it uses a different address number, 16 Gwendoline Street, instead of 39 Dover Street. So it still keeps that personal connection to a significant place in his life, but marks the new chapter.
It really seems like this program is deeply rooted in own personal and his sense. And from his perspective in the source, why was choosing IPAR, Ron and Alfredo's platform, the right move for him? What did he value most?
He really emphasizes the artistic freedom the platform offers. He values the sense that, and this is a quote from him, no one is looking over your shoulder and judging you.
That's huge for creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he also appreciates the flexibility it gives listeners. They can tune in via shortwave, medium wave, or streaming.
Artistic freedom, no judge. Those are powerful motivators to project. Given all the challenges, the scrappy start, the equipment issues, the sheer perseverance needed, what does he feel is the most important lesson he's learned through this whole event?
His key takeaway, stated very clearly in the source, is the importance of perseverance. He specifically says the lesson is to persevere, even if you feel like giving up.
A simple but profound lesson, and one that clearly runs through the whole story of this program's evolution and its incredible reach. The sources also mentioned something about a specific broadcast slot on IPAR, one that attracts other small producers like him.
Yes, apparently there's a dedicated block on Saturday morning. It runs from 0900 to 1000 Central European Time.
Prime time, Saturday morning.
Seems like. And the sources also include a claim made by IPR that their station actually has the strongest signal in the European band during that particular hour-long slot.
A powerful signal then, both literally and, well, figuratively, for people seeking a platform for their voices and their creativity. So, pulling all of this together, what are the real key takeaways from this dive into 16 Gwendoline Street and the world of international
Well, I think we've clearly seen the unique and, frankly, vital role of platforms like IP and IRRS, the service run by NEXUS-IBA, with Ron and Alfredo there in Milan, how they championed free speech and managed to bypass censorship using technologies like shortwave, which many might dismiss.
Right, the tech aspect is fascinating.
And then there's the very personal journey of a creator, Stephen John Jones, someone who started with, let's be honest, minimal equipment, but through sheer perseverance, built a program with genuine documented global reach.
And the surprising, maybe even moving connection that this older technology shortwave can still provide today. You have this deeply personal, arts-focused program finding a dedicated audience across continents, firewalls, even conflict zones, bringing a sense of community and this valued content.
Yeah, it's such a powerful example that effective communication isn't always about having the newest, shiniest tech. Sometimes it's about using the right tool, even an older one, to genuinely bridge divide.
It really is. Which kind of brings us to a final thought for you there.
Yeah, something to maybe mull over. In a world that feels absolutely saturated with instant digital media, where everything seems to be available on demand with just a click or a tap, what does it actually mean that a program like 16 Gwendoline Street, personal, focused on arts, broadcast via analog signals like shortwave, can still resonate so deeply that it can connect with listeners across these immense distances, bypass barriers, and bring a sense of shared value, especially in challenging circumstances?
What other overlooked or perhaps older technologies might still hold some unexpected power? Power to bridge divide, foster genuine connection, or maybe provide essential access in our modern, supposedly hyper-connected but sometimes actually quite fragmented world? Let me think about.